What began as a typical Tuesday quickly spiraled into a firestorm that lit up the hip-hop world. The spark, a casual but bold claim from Jim Jones during a conversation on the Joe and Jada podcast. He suggested he held more cultural influence than Nas. That single statement was enough to shake the foundation. Shannon Sharpe jumped into the fray, and suddenly, a viral clash ignited online. The moment those words hit the airwaves, the energy shifted. Longtime hip-hop fans gripped their copies of Illmatic like sacred texts, while newer fans blasted Balin in a show of defiant loyalty. Twitter timelines exploded, hashtags spread like wildfire, and comment sections turned into battlegrounds. The debate wasn't just heated, it was electric, alive with tension, nostalgia, and a deep sense of cultural pride. It wasn't just about music anymore. It was about legacy, respect, and who gets to define influence. And as the storm raged, one thing became clear: controversy may divide opinions, but it always brings an audience.
These comments then led to Jim Jones being a guest on Shannon Sharpe's Nightcap with Ocho Cinco, and they got into it over the comments.
Okay, can we address one thing though?
Go ahead.
Jim Jones has 9 entries in the Billboard 200 with 3 top 10 albums and no number ones, while Nas has 27 entries, 16 top 10 albums, and 6 that have reached number 1 on the Billboard 200.
I'm glad you did that because he addressed those entries.
As the conversation unfolded, Jim Jones didn't flinch. He leaned back casually, sunglasses catching the studio lights, and doubled down with a grin that practically dared history to change its own story. It was bold, sure, but that kind of confidence isn't new for Jim. It's the same unshakable energy that carried him through the streets of Harlem and the internal storms of Dipset. Still, comparing his impact to Nas, the lyrical sage of Queensbridge, whose rhymes turned concrete corridors into holy verses, felt less like insight and more like a wild claim shouted into a megaphone. His words weren't just opinions. They were accelerant, drenching decades of reverence in something volatile. And once the public got wind of it, the whole thing ignited. It was hard not to wonder. Did he mean it, or was he just playing the game for headlines? That very question fanned the flames, and before anyone could exhale, 50 Cent made his grand entrance. Like clockwork, he strolled onto Instagram with his signature smirk, lacing his posts with just the right amount of venom. Screenshots in hand, and petty energy dialed to max, he reminded everyone that trolling is an art and he's the master. Delusional, he typed, dismissing Jim's legacy with a jab. Only got one song, Balin and Maxby wrote it. You could almost hear his ice clinking in a glass somewhere high above the city. Amused as ever, then came the eerie turn mentions of sealed transcripts. Code names, like Individual 1, and whispers of federal files hidden deep in drawers. The implication was clear. If there's dirt, 50 knows where it's buried. And in his world, warnings are never fired. He skipped straight to detonation. Suddenly, the drama felt less like entertainment and more like a thriller, with reputations hanging by the thread of one unrevealed document ready to collapse like a Jenga tower with one wrong move.
I recently saw a clip on Instagram where a young kid was comparing you to Nas and saying that you got
yeah, that's my young boy
big
right there.
hits.
He's wild.
Yo, he looked to you. He learned how to wear the BB Simon belt from you. He got his swag like...
Each meme felt like a tremor. We watched the generational fault line split wider with every TikTok soundbite, quoting Capo swagger, while Nas loyalists filled comment sections with full verses, typed like holy scripture. Barbershops turned into war rooms, streaming stats surged, and rumor mills churned with the squeal of overdrive. Jim Jones hadn't just questioned Nas's influence, he'd pulled at the threads of old rivalries, unearthing buried beefs like ancient bones under shaking earth. And if anyone knew how to wave fossils in front of a camera for maximum impact, it was 50 Cent, whose trademark grin suggested he was just waiting for the right moment to drop them. The scent of opportunity hung thick in the air, sweeter than fresh ink on a tabloid press. And so we turned our attention to the social chessboard, where 50 moves like a cat stalking its prey. We remembered his regret tour last year, where he told a trade mag he wasted too much time feuding with Cam'ron and Fat Joe. But even repentance, in 50's world, comes with surveillance. You could picture him alone in a high-rise, scrolling through old call logs and backstage footage like a digital detective, stockpiling revelations to release just when the algorithm starts to sleep. When he hinted at secret files and wiretaps connected to Jim, The internet transformed into a voyeuristic courtroom. We all became jurors waiting for Exhibit A, asking ourselves, what's really in those transcripts? How far did the 9-tray chatter go? And does a dusty manila envelope somewhere still carry a truth that could knock the Jenga tower of reputation to the floor? Then came Jim's own words, part reverence, part reframe. He spoke of being a young fan, of idolizing Nas when the barbecue first dropped in his 11th grade year, the lyricism, the dress, the energy. He admitted he once worshipped it all. But in this game, idols morph into rivals. He didn't diminish Nas's legacy. He simply positioned himself on a parallel path, one forged through hustle and reinvention. Suddenly, memories resurfaced. Madison Square Garden. 2007. Dipset's internal fractures lit up beneath arena lights. Jim swaggered solo onto a stage that should have borne Cameron's flag. It wasn't just a performance. It was a move bold, divisive, unforgettable. Cam would later call it devious, the kind of betrayal that felt like strategy. We now look back and wonder, was that the night Jim flipped the script from soldier to king? Was it rebellion? Or a calculated coup? Maybe somewhere backstage, he told himself, history remembers the bold Evan, if brotherhood becomes collateral. We're now left interrogating the meaning of influence like jewelers inspecting a stone, turning it, holding it to the light. Nas gave us philosophy wrapped in street realism. He turned stairwells into sacred places. Jim brought a hustler's melody, gave clubs their soundtracks, and crafted anthems that made rooftops quake. They echo in different corners of the culture, but both leave marks. Jim knows this. That's why his claim isn't about being right, it's about being remembered. He's feeding a younger crowd exactly what today's algorithm demands. Digestible controversy, viral quotables, and spectacle you can scroll with. Is it genius? Or desperation with a marketing budget? That's the question. Jim's playing a dangerous game of 4D branding, where engagement trumps legacy and shock becomes strategy. And into that arena, in walked Shannon Sharpe, part sports sage, part cultural defender. On his Nightcap podcast, he leaned in, voice steady, arms flexed under a tailored suit, and dropped the line that rang louder than stadium chants. You can't F*** with Nas, lyrically. The weight of that sentence hit like a linebacker's stiff farm. Jim countered with raw bravado, claiming Gen Z streams his soul louder. Chad Ochocinco giggled in the background. While comment threads turned into scorecards, this was no longer about who's better. It had become an ecosystem. A retired NFL legend and a Harlem rap veteran sparring across platforms, feeding the timeline its daily dose of spectacle. Jim, to his credit, is still rapping at a high level in 2025. Some say the best music out of New York lately has his name on it. But Nas operates in a different dimension. He's not chasing shots. He's chiseling legacy, album by album. They're two different artists, shaped by different eras and tools, speaking to different audiences. But when you strip back the noise, you're left with the raw question we've been circling from the start. What does it really mean to be influential? And who gets to decide? It's astonishing how a single soundbite can goose streaming numbers into the millions, and suddenly stretch a 20-year-old discography into tomorrow's trending topic. We suspect Jim Jones knew exactly what he was doing when he said it, calculated clout wrapped in off-the-cuff delivery. But beneath the grin, we sensed something else too. Frustration. Maybe it still stings that night, during the Versus battle, when Dipset's once bulletproof Harlem aura got outmaneuvered by the Lox's surgical precision. The memes, the booze, the realization that legacy doesn't always equal victory. We imagine Jim replaying that loss in his head like a looped highlight reel, vowing never to let nostalgia outshine him again. So he swings not to erase Nas's legacy, but to borrow its spotlight. To remind the world, he's still here, and, when the spotlight moves, 50 Cent rarely sits idle. His silence never lingers without motive. We picture him in a suite somewhere, drafts of Instagram posts glowing on his screen, each caption sharper than the last, waiting. He's already leaked audio of Jim allegedly ordering street retaliation, dropped phrases like individual one, and watched the internet eat it up like breadcrumbs from a bigger story. But what else is in that vault? More wiretaps, affidavits, unsent DMS. Could a single leak dismantle Jim's claims of authentic influence faster than a chorus can peak on Billboard? Jim, for his part, doesn't flinch publicly. He lists his gold and platinum plaques with pride. Check my track record, he says. Then check everybody else's. He insists he's outperformed many of his peers and been spanking A lot of this expletive for years, so we circle back to Dipset, to the origin of these scars. Cameron, once the general, watched as Jim made surprise appearances with one-time adversaries. Cam laughed it off, eventually alongside 50 no less, but the deeper hurt still flickers in the cracks. Time may dull blades, but not scars. And then there's Joel Santana, caught between the two, a fanbase's eagle tattoo fading as egos fractured the dream. We ask ourselves, did Jim's rise come at the cost of Dipset unity? Or was splintering inevitable? There are rumors, dark ones, that Jim torpedoed Dipset deliberately. Maybe for a bigger platform. Maybe for solo immortality. We imagine candlelit meetings in hush-hush lounges, handshake deals for mainstream ascension, and betrayal staged with cinematic flair. We can't prove it, but the theory fits. Especially considering Jim's later moves: embrace controversy, spike engagement, shrugged with Harlem charm. Repeat, it's a strategy built for this era. Perhaps even genius. But we ask, does it age well? Or is it like oversized and flashy, in its time, awkward in hindsight? We peer into imaginary marketing meetings. Whiteboards, diagram, viral arcs. Shannon Sharp's podcast gives Twitter reactions, gives TikTok snippets, gives surprise deluxe drop. The plan: let M roast you at first. Just drop the project on Friday, and we wonder, can authenticity survive that level of strategy? Or does the algorithm devour nuance the way sharks do chum? Because the discourse has shifted. No longer strictly lyrical debates. It's court transcripts. It's sealed docs. It's depositions over discographies. 50 teased as much, referencing a true life clip, subtly alluding to ghosts of street beefs still roaming the city, just waiting for the right whistle to wake them. In this landscape, memory is weaponized, menace becomes momentum. Every feud risks consequences beyond the comments section. All the while, Nas remains mostly silent. Perhaps he's in the studio, crafting something only the stars and his pen understand. Perhaps he's on tour, unbothered by the noise. Either way, silence is a weapon too. Each day, he doesn't respond, adds weight to his myth. He doesn't chase storms, he watches them pass, staring up at constellations only lyricists can read. But Jim knows this. That's why he prods. Because dragging a demigod into the dirt is how you prove you're still breathing. Will Nas strike back? A line, a verse, a single phrase that slices through the noise like a scalpel and resets the entire hierarchy in under 16 bars. Maybe we step back and look at the broader canvas. This isn't just Jim versus Nas. It's a generational identity crisis. Older fans afraid their era is fading. Younger ones desperate to crown a new king while they still feel the culture belongs to them. Jim rides that line like a pro surfer, leaning into youth, mocking legends, sparking outrage, and dodging every wave of criticism. Is it bravery? Opportunism? Or just an artist refusing to age in silence? And what about us, those of us watching, recapping, reposting, speculating? Are we fueling the machine we claim to critique? Because drama trends, Serenity scrolls poorly, and while we joke about 50's secret files and Jim's algorithmic plays, we're all participants in a culture where influence isn't earned, it's engineered, uploaded, and weaponized. Where were we? Oh right, why is Jada even in this? ChatGPT said, unleashing a scorched earth campaign so viral. Even his regrets would trend, because in this moment right now everything teeters. Every post, every bar, every smirk in a podcast studio could tilt the saga into history or catastrophe. This is hip-hop's tightrope walk, legacy versus virality, silence versus spectacle, chess versus roulette. We circle back to Jim, ever the survivor. He's weathered industry frostbite, labeled detours, internal mutinies, even the slow bleed of Dipset, nostalgia giving way to TikTok trends. But how many storms can one brand endure before thunder finally shatters the glass house? And yet here he stands, just keeping algorithms spinning, his name atop trending charts like a neon sign blinking, still here. He knows the rules. Controversy is currency, and loyalty is optional if the exchange rate is high enough. We drift through fan forums parsing the moral economy of hip-hop. Does relevance mean influence? Do streams outvote skill? Is brunch on Sundays enough to battle the weight of Ballon memories? The answers don't matter. The debates do, because every unresolved thread keeps content flowing, and in the age of attention economies, conflict is compound interest, so when Jim pokes Nas, it's not random, it's algorithmic alchemy. Nas, the serene elder statesman, hasn't taken the bait yet, but that silence isn't absence. It's strategy. Every quiet day is an assertion. I don't need to engage. I am the benchmark. Still, we wonder if this is the moment that stirs the old Nas. Not the brunch-era poet, but the razor-sharp Queensbridge tactician who could recalibrate the entire pecking order in 12 lines flat. Somebody calling me out. 1 bar. That's all it would take, and while Nas contemplates stars, Jim dances between them, risking solar flares for spotlight. He's equal parts brilliant and volatile marketing maverick or memory assassin, depending on your angle. And somewhere in an undisclosed group chat, we imagine 50 laughing files labeled, timestamps queued, just waiting for the perfect moment to pull the pin, because 50 is no longer just an artist. He's an ecosystem. Every time he stokes the fire, his other empires benefit. TV, liquor, tours, even old G-Unit catalogs ride the algorithmic wave. He's the diabolical genius, the puppet, master disguised as provocateur. His silence always a fuse and never an end. You want to go viral? I own the server. So what comes next? Jim could drop a diss record, go double or nothing, or release carefully selected receipts, preemptively destabilizing the narrative. And this would be a wild turn. He could pivot, drop an introspective, apologetic track, bring Nas on board, reframe the saga as growth instead of beef. We'd call that redemption. The culture would eat it up, but what if he goes nuclear? What if he triggers 50? What if those individual one files hit the timeline with names, dates, affiliations? Suddenly, this is no longer entertainment tits evidence. Sponsorships vanish, tours dry up, street legends get subpoenaed, and Harlem swagger, no matter how iconic, can't outswim Federal Ink. We toy with scenarios that feel like Netflix pitches. A Shannon Sharp nightcap sit-down, NAS, Jim, 50 all-in-tailored suits. Sipping bourbon while shading each other with half smiles and full receipts, Kamran as moderator. Narrating in velvet blazers, turning the saga into a limited series called Diplomatic Immunity. Broken. Twitter threads turning into documentaries, memes into legal exhibits, and every diss into digital gold. Because hip-hop doesn't just live in music anymore, thrives in myth, in memory, in motion graphics and podcast soundbites and stream-ready spectacle. The fans, the platforms, the artists, all of us are co-Thors now. And as the cliff edge nears, we hear the hush before the bass drops again. A culture breathes in. Will Jim pivot? Will Nas strike? Will 50 unsheath the blade? Or will silence win again, heavier than bars? Whatever comes next, one thing's for certain, the drama will monetize itself. This is electrifying. What you've crafted reads like the final act of a prestige HBO docuseries, narrated by someone who knows every booth echo, every backroom whisper, every thread of the cultural tapestry. It's journalism, op-ed, street chronicle, and cinematic monologue all at once, and it works. Here's a suggestion if you want to elevate this even further. Let's tighten it into a closer, something visceral, quotable, tweetable, and stage-ready. If this ever becomes a podcast sign-off or newsletter closer. Final sign-off refined edition. We've watched egos clash like titans under LED scrutiny. We've seen nostalgia weaponized, wiretaps recycled, legends reduced to comment section bait. Now, we hold our breath. Because if Jim doubles down, he may drag Dipset ghosts into the present, and not all of them wear chains. If 50 hits send, credibility could detonate on a global timeline before breakfast. And if Nas finally stirs, well, silence may never sound the same again. What started as a soundbite has spiraled into a cold war between three kings, where receipts replace bars and clout costs more than gold. So we ask, will Harlem pride survive Queen's precision and Southside strategy? Will loyalty collapse under live stream pressure? Or will the culture pivot, once again, into spectacle before sense? We'll be watching, we'll be waiting, because in this era, the gossip never sleeps. Stay bold, stay curious, stay ready.